comment that I received lately of the volume being too low. I put up the gain. It's probably going to have a lot more background noise, but you guys let me know in the comments down below which one you prefer. Last video's volume or this one. Now today we're gonna start the week with a story that it's super frustrating. I think that these cases are never not frustrating, but this one is a little bit more. It's just kind of those cases that in the end it's like a clue game that you're suspecting of one person and then you go to the next person and then you're like, it was the butler, it was the lady with the hat, it was this person, or and then in the end it's shocking what happens. Now, this case took place in Bloomington, Illinois, and on November 4th. This wasn't that long ago, and honestly, this is kind of very fresh in my mind, but November 4th, 2014, this 17-year-old boy, David Zimmerman, woke up before sunrise and went to check on something. Now, again, this is a 17-year-old boy, but he is the oldest of the 3 siblings that live in the house. And they had this routine that when the mom was going to come home late, they left this front room light on for her. Once she got home, she would get in the house, turn off the light, and go to bed. Now, Pam, the mom, Pam Zimmerman, was a successful business woman and she had a fiance at the time. So, getting home late was not uncommon for her. Not spending the night at the house without telling anybody, not so common. Now, when he got up that morning, the light was still on, and it was a little bit scary for this 17-year-old boy because, he knew that she was very responsible, very reliable, and that there must be some kind of a good explanation because the other option is that something bad happened to his mom. Now, he had a couple of sisters and they are twins, and their names are Heidi and Rachel. He was 17 and the twins were 15 years old, and they lived with their mom that divorced their dad 2 years ago, or 2 years previously. The night before, the kids tried to contact her, but she never picked up the phone. One of the girls was worried about her mom, and so she tried to track her location with the Find My Phone herself to go check at the office and see if she could find any signs of Pam there. Now, when she arrives, the first bad sign was that Pam's car was at the office parking lot. She started freaking out. She even called her husband. She called 911. And she also said, well, I'm not sure if, there's anything to be reported, but she left it at that. Now, she sees a car approaching the parking lot, and when the lady gets out of the car, it was Ina, who was the office manager, and she told her, I'm looking for Pam. Did anything look out of the ordinary yesterday? And Ina said no. She looked good, in good spirits, and she kind of left at 4:30, but then she was coming back to meet with her last client of the day. At that point, they were like, well, we must check inside and see what we find. So when they got inside, before they get inside the office, they see a few things that were pretty disturbing. Number one, the blinds were closed, and it was an everyday practice to leave the blinds open, and the lights were off, and usually the main or the lobby area of the office would always stay on. Now they get inside, and when they turn on the lights, they find Pam in a fetal position on the floor. Julie was a nurse, and she immediately went and checked to see if she was alive, but she could tell that she had no pulse and that she's been dead for a while. Now, this wasn't a gruesome crime scene. This wasn't crazy, out there, scary. It was scary because, their friend was dead on the floor. But it wasn't one of those scenes that, coming out of a scary movie. So they were not sure if maybe she had an accident. Maybe she tripped and fell. I don't know how much blood, or I don't know if they could tell from where the blood was coming from, but the police got there soon after, and they had the tough job of going to the school and tell the kids about what happened, or at least that their mom died. They didn't know how at the time, and they just needed to tell the kids because while they were at school, they were texting and calling non-stop to try to find out where their mom was at. Now, the police soon enough knew that this was no accident, and that happened the night before midnight actually, with a 9mm gun. She had 2 bullets, her chest, one in the temple and one in the back, so overall an overkill. Not necessary, but whoever did it wanted to make sure that she didn't survive. Now, it was tricky. The scene, if this was an office invasion, it would make sense that they cut the phone lines actually the daughter found on the app the night before. The wallet was also there with everything inside, credit card, everything. So the police started thinking that whoever did this wanted them to believe that this was a robbery. They started this investigation, and honestly, they had to look very close at 3 different guys that were very close to her and had access to her that day. Number 1 was the last client, remember, that she was going to come back for. Number 2, the ex-husband who she's been having problems with. And number 3, the new fiance who was so worried about her that called the neighbor to go check on her. Now, let's talk about the fiance for just a few minutes, because this guy, there's not much to really talk about him. According to the kids that they met him, or they even, I don't know how deep of a conversation they had, but a couple of times. And the third time, it was to celebrate their engagement. When Pam disappeared, though, he just didn't rush to Bloomington, but instead he stayed in the Chicago area where he lived, which sounded very weird and almost suspicious, knowing that if you were so worried about your fiance disappearing, it would only make sense, or most people would take off no matter what compromises they have to make to get there and look for her. No, he stayed behind, and when he was questioned, he said that he was home alone when Pam was killed. The police started looking in his phone, and things were looking so bad for this guy. I mean, they realized that at the time he was going back and forth with a couple of ladies that were more than friends to him, if you know what I mean. Scott also told the kids that, okay, Pam disappeared. Then the next week, Scott had a dinner thing with Pam's kids, and he said that, okay, and nobody asked him, but he said, I had nothing to do with this, and I have to move on. Well, glad she didn't marry you, guy. What the heck? It looked bad from the beginning, and the kids were kind of shocked to realize the kind of guy he was. That only after a week that Pam, after Pam disappearance and then finding her body, now it's like, well, too bad. I need to move on. Thanks for being here, guys. Just informing you. No, if that wasn't suspicious enough, 2 months later, he was dating someone new. He doesn't look okay. See, this is the part of the clue game that I was talking about. It was the butler. It was the lady with the hat. It was the... I don't remember the other characters, though. It's been a really long time since I played Clue. The next one that they had to look into was Ellen Whitlaw. wasn't true. He said that he went to the office, had the meeting, and around 5:40, he left the office and went straight for dinner with his girlfriend. The police were still interested in the guy because, he owned the same kind of gun that Pam was killed with, the 9mm, so they had to ask him for the gun and send it to get tested and see if that was the gun that was used to kill her. In the meantime, they started investigating the ex-husband, Kirk Zimmerman. Now, Kirk and Pam hated their guns at this point, but nobody could tell. And that is something that later on you'll see how there's so many inconsistencies in this theory. There's some people that said that they had a really bad relationship after the divorce. But then there was some other people that said that they were really close to them, and while they were married, they were never fighting. That they just grew apart, and that's why they divorced. And that they had a good relationship after the divorce. Some other people were like, they hated their gods. They never had a good relationship. But then if you move on to the kids, they said that they had a pretty good divorce and that they never fought. So, take it for what you will, but it's kind of take one side or the other here. In a documentary that I watched, they just said they hated their guts and that they were fighting constantly. Yet I found that there were other theories that maybe were not explored in the documentary, in that I feel like it's hard to hide from your kids, your older kids, when you hate somebody, and according to their kids, that they have no reason to lie, and that they really want somebody to find the killer of their mom. I don't know why the three of them would say, not really, they had a good relationship. Well, they interviewed this guy, the ex-husband, and he cooperated from the beginning. He never asked for a lawyer. And I have to say that I watched the interview, or part of it anyways, and he seemed like the coolest, calmest guy I've ever seen in a police station giving a statement. He was almost ASMR speaking, like the guy. I just couldn't believe it. He either was a really good liar or he really had nothing to hide, and that's why he never asked for the lawyer. Well, they started to look into the guy. He said that he was at home reading that night, that he probably fell asleep while reading. He even explained that sometimes he uses that technique of reading so he could go to bed and sleep. They took a DNA sample and they did a gun residue test on his hands. They took his computer, the phone, and they got warrants for those two, but the guy could have said no to gun residue tests and DNA sample, yet he didn't care. Now, they kept digging and they did find that Kirk had a girlfriend and her name is Kate. And what made them a little bit suspicious is that the night that Pam was murdered, he was supposed to meet his girlfriend to go out on a date. And interesting enough, the girlfriend was going to pick him up at his house. And she did, but he was not there, or at least he didn't answer the door. Now they had to call him back for a second interview because why in the world wouldn't he mention that he had a date that he skipped that night? And he went jokes, and I use that technique to go to bed, and you know what I mean. So in the second interview, he said that he didn't mention it because he wanted to keep Kate out of the whole thing. But, I mean, this kind of leaves the question in the air, right? Was he actually home, or was... I mean, the kids did not suspect of their dad at all. And when they interview Kirk's brother, and let me explain, because what I read, it sounded very like Kirk's brother, you know, his friend, his best buddy, and whatever. But on the contrary, Kirk's brother was a good friend of Pam, actually, her best friend. And he loved her like a sister. He didn't care that they were divorced. And he was one of the guys that said, hey, I even lived with them for a while. There was no hostility, nothing crazy that would indicate that they were fighting even before they got a divorce. They didn't agree, but they were both very grown-up, professional people that would not do anything crazy or petty like that. You know, and he even mentions, you know, that Kirk, the ex-husband, Pam's ex-husband, he even bought a house in the same neighborhood to stay close, and that he was very involved in the kids' lives. I mean, when the kids were interviewed, they not only adore their dad, but they love Kate too. So, nothing was making sense. And at this point, you would think that the police had enough evidence to make an arrest. Well, no. It took them months. The gun wasn't the client's. That report came back. And he did, in fact, was having dinner with a girlfriend. And they also found out that right after leaving dinner with a girlfriend, he went and met another woman for dinner. So according to the police, everything checked out. Now the fiance was confirmed that he was miles away and he was texting other women. I mean, the guy was ashamed of confessing to this, but really he didn't want to talk about it because he was a cheater. But Kirk's story wasn't so easy to confirm. I mean, the word going around is that he was bitter because she got the house that he wanted to keep the house, and that she got a lot of money from him, and now he wasn't going to be able to retire at the age of 55 as he planned his entire life. I mean, the guy didn't want to wait until he was in his 60s to retire. And to make things worse, on October, Pam had a legal letter sent to him demanding $4,000 for the kids' expenses. Some kind of an expense that they decided to split in two, and apparently he didn't pay her that part. And that he needed to pay those almost, that he had to pay all that money, I think $4,000 or $3,900 within 5 days of receiving the letter. And according to the office manager, Ina, remember we talked about her, she said that she was terrified of Kirk. That is, later on that was not even admissible in court, but there's a lot of, oh no, she feared her husband, no, oh no, she didn't, she had a good time with that. Yeah. Such a conflicting stories that you don't know what to think. Now, 8 months later, they got the test on the residue on Kirk's car back, and they had more than enough to arrest the guy. On July 21st, 2015, victim's family. And then he got out on bond for 3.5 years under house arrest. And now the girls did move in back with the dad and, of course, their brother, but they couldn't be left alone with him, so the brother must be in the same room with the dad and the girls at all times if they wanted to spend time together. Now the trial. This is the tricky part where you're gonna probably believe one thing or the other. Kirk was painted as a greedy guy, a murderer, and they also had some kind of evidence. Okay, apparently Kirk's phone pinned at the house where he said that he was, but the GPS on his car said that the car was parked near Pam's office. There's also some kind of a surveillance video that show from a nearby building that show a car very similar to his that parked around Pam's office that night. There was also this eyewitness, and the eyewitness was a very nervous woman that kept saying a guy coming out of the back door of Pam's office that he was carrying a bag, and that she also identified this guy as Kirk. Police never found the gun, but they did find gunshot residue in the gear shift thing of his car. And they also presented the letter asking for the $4,000. So was this a trigger that made him go mad and kill the wife, or ex-wife I should say? Now, do you think that's more than enough evidence, right? Well, hold on. The defense said that he didn't do it. That $4,000 was not worth killing somebody. Not. Especially not, the mom of his kids. That this was nonsense. That he had a full pension guaranteed at whatever time he wanted to retire. That he was making $95,000 working for a State Farm, some kind of job at State Farm. And that he had $240,000 on his 401k. And finally, that he was set up. When the defense lawyer tried to talk about Newell, about that night with the eyewitness, she did not want to answer. She kept saying, "I saw what I saw." He also put in question that video surveillance that was very grainy. You can't really tell if this was a black car, a gray car, a deep blue car, if this was exactly the car that they were looking for. And he said that the car GPS was nonsense. Okay, it's nonsense, but who would believe that statement? I mean, the guy, and that it was never admissible in court before, and that he didn't know why they let it go in this case. I don't know why a GPS location of your car would not be used in court in a murder investigation. I'm sorry, that doesn't make sense in my head. And he said that the gun residue that they found in his car was probably from one of the officers that was checking inside, and that probably didn't wear gloves or something and kind of touch the car and left the gun residue that really wasn't Kirk's. They tried to blame it in bad police work. The idea that now everyone thought that he was the killer. And then, to gunshot at 5:10, and she was like a block away from the office. But why was that important though? Well, remember that her last client was there and left at 5:40. And according to the defense, this guy, Mr. Whitlow, I think that's how you pronounce it, was not investigated enough, and according to him, he had more than enough time to kill Pam and leave by 5:40 and go meet his girlfriends afterward. Now here's the kicker. It kind of makes sense, right? And if I was part of the jury of this trial, I'd be afraid to say, hey, maybe he's right. Maybe somebody didn't do their job right and they put their gunshot residue there. Maybe the GPS location is not as accurate as we think. And that is why it was never admissible in court before, and now all of a sudden we're supposed to keep it in mind. And finally, what if? What if she's right and she heard gunshot? Well, she said a gunshot, she didn't say many of them, or several, and we know there was several of them. What if the last client had more than enough time to go kill her and then go move on and do his dining with the girlfriends? It just really created enough doubt for finding Kirk Zimmerman not guilty. And it was bittersweet. I saw this part of the ending of the trial, and Pam's family sitting on one side, crying because they were sure that he had something to do with her murder, and he was the one who would benefit the most by getting rid of Pam. And then on the other side, it was the kids with their dad being happy that he was found innocent. Now, if you ask me, that's enough reasons to make you doubt. But I don't know if I buy the idea, or if I would have, if I was there, by the idea of bad police work for the gunshot residue, and I don't know if I would believe that the GPS location is not as reliable as we thought. I think that the GPS location gives more than enough evidence to put the car there. Then the police need to do their investigation and find things to put him there. Because that his car was there really doesn't prove that he was driving it and that he was there. So again, kind of a bad clue game where at the end, not even the authorities could really pin this murder to somebody. And now the kids are left with the idea of a dad that everyone thinks that killed their mom, yet they can't believe it. They had so many suspects, and then all of a sudden nobody's guilty. Nobody could have done it. This wasn't random. And I'm almost like, where did he drop the things? The phone. Was his car there? Could you pin the GPS location of his car there too? I guess they don't have enough. Ow. So, very frustrating case. To me anyways. Let me know what you think. Sometimes you guys come up with the best scenarios that I could have never thought of. And it's such a shame that somebody was so successful, such a great mother that her kids miss her so dearly, was killed by a ghost. Because I can't believe that they don't have. I mean, who did this smart enough to get away with it? Or lucky enough to get away with it? Just overall a very bad situation, and I hope that one day they can find out whoever did it. Because I think that if Kirk did it and he ended up with benefiting from everything, that would not be one of those happy endings in a very horrible situation. If the client did it, why could nobody pin it to the guy? And overall, she had a few very promiscuous kind of guys that surrounded her and that lied from the beginning to try to hide other relationships that they had. Maybe hiding it from the girlfriend in the client's case. And that piece of work and that the new fiance was by having a relationship with other girls at the same time that he was waiting to marry this lady that was so amazingly